After Mom died, Dad married Cassandra. Years later, I found Mom's letter exposing Cassandra's secret. On Mother's Day, I gave her the truth and watched her face fall. Part 1, The Gift She Didn't See Coming. Mother's Day used to be easy. When I was younger, it meant scribbled crayon cards and plastic flowers from the grocery store. I'd crawl into my mom's bed way too early with some lopsided breakfast I tried to make, and she'd act like it was the most incredible thing she'd ever seen, even if I'd somehow burned cereal. That was before. Before cancer. Before hospital rooms and quiet goodbyes. Before my world split into before and after. Now, Mother's Day feels like walking through a landmine of memories. But this year, it came with a new twist, because this year, I had a stepmom. And this year, I gave her a gift. Not just any gift. One that said everything I couldn't quite say out loud. Let me rewind. My dad remarried 2 years after my mom died. People say that's fast, but grief warps time. What felt like a blink to me might have felt like a lifetime to him. Either way, he brought home someone new. Her name was Nicole. At first, I tried. I really did. I said hi. I smiled through gritted teeth at the dinner table. I even sat through an entire season of one of her awful baking shows while she pretended not to notice I was barely paying attention. She wasn't mean. Not directly. But everything about her felt off. Too polished. Too rehearsed. Like she read How to Win Over Your Stepchildren in one night and tried to memorize the lines. She'd correct me on how I folded laundry. Sweetie, your mom must have just had a different method. She changed the living room decor like my mom's style was a phase we had all outgrown. She called herself my bonus mom when I hadn't asked for extra credit. And worst of all, she tried to erase my mom with kindness. Not in a burn the photos way. Nicole was smarter than that. But every time I mentioned a memory, she'd redirect it. If I got sad, she'd offer solutions instead of space. She smiled through my grief like it was a stage I'd outgrow. I never yelled. I never exploded. But I never bonded with her either. And somewhere along the way, I stopped trying. Mother's Day rolled around like it always does. At school, teachers handed out construction paper and glue sticks and said, "Make something beautiful for the most important woman in your life." I stared at the blank card. I didn't want to make it for Nicole. But ignoring her felt cruel. She was trying. She'd made dinner the other night and left a sticky note on my lunch that said, "You're amazing." So I made something. Not because I wanted to. Because I needed to say something without saying it. The gift was simple. A photo album. But inside weren't pictures of Nicole and me. They were photos of my mom. Page after page of memories she didn't belong to. I wrapped it neatly. No note. Just her name on a tag. And on Mother's Day morning, I handed it to her while my dad watched with that hopeful, fragile look that says, "Please let this work." Nicole opened it. Her face changed. She tried to smile. Tried to keep her voice light as she flipped through the first few pages. Wow. These are beautiful. But by the third page, she stopped flipping. And for the first time ever, she didn't have anything to say. Part 2, Silent Pages and Loud Emotions. Nicole sat there, the album open on her lap, her fingers still resting on the page. For a long moment, there was nothing but quiet. I watched her face, searching for a clue, confusion. Sadness? Anger? But what I saw was something else. Something I couldn't quite place. Then she looked up. Her eyes were glassy. "I didn't know," she whispered. And suddenly, it felt like the room was closing in. I wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault. That my mom was irreplaceable. That the memories in the album were mine to hold, not hers to compete with. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I just nodded. Because grief is complicated. And love doesn't come with instruction manuals, especially not blended family love. After that, the day passed in a blur. My dad tried to keep things light. Nicole tried to act like nothing had happened. But the weight of the album lingered between us. That night, I lay awake thinking about the impossible choices grief forces us to make. Do you hold on? Or do you let go? And if you let go, what do you keep? The days that followed were awkward. Nicole gave me space. I gave her space. Neither of us knew how to bridge the invisible gap growing between us. Sometimes, I'd catch her looking at the album on the shelf, her fingers hovering over the spine, before pulling away. Sometimes, I'd find myself staring at my own reflection, wondering who I was in this new family constellation. But then something shifted. It wasn't sudden. More like a crack in the ice. One afternoon, Nicole knocked on my door. She held a small box wrapped in shiny paper. "I don't know if this means anything," she said. "But I wanted to give you something." Inside was a locket. Simple silver, with a tiny engraving, "Family is chosen." I touched it gently, feeling the weight of that phrase. Maybe family was less about blood. Maybe it was about trying. Maybe, just maybe, there was room for all of us to heal. Part 3, Building Bridges in Broken Places. The locket wasn't a miracle cure. It didn't erase the years of distance or the invisible wall that had stood between us. But it was a start. For the first time, Nicole and I found ourselves talking, not about grief, not about the past, but about the little things. The music we liked. The books we read. The dumb sitcoms that made us laugh even when we didn't want to. It was awkward at times. Like learning a new language where half the words get lost in translation. But it was honest. We started sharing dinners again, not the forced family kind, but casual ones. Sometimes just the three of us. Other times, with my dad there too. I noticed Nicole stopped trying to fix me when I got sad. Instead, she listened. When I shared memories of my mom, she didn't interrupt. She let me have my space. And when Nicole opened up about her own struggles, the fear of never truly belonging, the pressure of stepping into a role she didn't ask for, I saw her as a person, not a replacement. It wasn't all smooth sailing. Some days, the old wounds flared. I'd catch Nicole hesitating at a photo on the wall and quickly looking away. She'd sometimes withdraw, scared she'd say the wrong thing. And I'd retreat when memories became too much. But slowly, those cracks softened. And in the in-between moments, shared cups of coffee, quiet conversations in the kitchen, I felt something new growing. One afternoon, Nicole invited me to help cook dinner. It was chaotic. We burned the sauce and spilled pasta water. We laughed until we cried. And I realized that family isn't perfect. It's messy. It's trying. It's showing up even when the past is heavy. And in that moment, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I'd found a new kind of family. Part 4, Holding On and Letting Go. Healing isn't a neat line from broken to whole. It's a messy dance, sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Nicole and I had good days. Days filled with laughter and shared playlists. Days where I forgot for a moment about all the years of grief. But then came the hard days. Days when the silence in the room felt louder than any argument. Days when a glance at a photo album could trigger a flood of emotions. Days when I wondered if I'd ever fully belong. We learned to hold space for those moments. Nicole didn't push me to move on faster. I didn't demand she erase her own story. Instead, we found a rhythm in our imperfect togetherness. We talked openly about what scared us, the fear of replacing a mother, the guilt of wanting something new, the pain of feeling divided between old loyalties and new love. That kind of honesty was rare. And it became the foundation for something solid. One evening, after dinner, Nicole said something that stayed with me. "You're not what I expected when I became your stepmom." I smiled, curious. "What did you expect? Someone angry? Someone distant? Someone who hated me?" I laughed softly. "I thought that too." She nodded. "But you're not that. You're brave. You're kind. You're real." And in that moment, I realized healing isn't about forgetting the past. It's about honoring it while choosing to build new memories. Our relationship didn't suddenly become perfect. We still had awkward silences. Still had misunderstandings. Still had moments when the past cast long shadows. But we were trying. And sometimes, that's enough. Part 5, Lessons in Blending and Becoming. Blending families isn't just about moving furniture or merging schedules. It's about reconciling histories, untangling emotions, and learning to love people who didn't come with instruction manuals. Nicole and I both came into this with our own fears. She feared she'd never be enough. I feared I'd never be accepted. Together, we stumbled through moments of misunderstanding and grace. One of the hardest lessons. Learning that love doesn't erase pain. It doesn't fix all the broken places. But it can hold the cracks gently. It can make space for both joy and grief. For laughter and tears. For new traditions and old memories. We celebrated small wins. Cooking a meal together without arguing. Watching a movie without checking our phones. Taking a walk where the only tension was which coffee shop to try next. Those moments built trust. And trust slowly built something neither of us thought possible. I also learned to forgive, not just Nicole, but myself. For the times I judged too quickly. For the times I withdrew instead of reaching out. For the times I wished things were different but didn't know how to change them. Forgiveness became the bridge I needed. Not to forget, but to move forward. Part 6, When Family is the People Who Show Up. For so long, I thought family was only what blood defined. But family isn't a DNA test or a last name. Family is who shows up. Who holds your hand when you cry. Who fights for you when you're too tired to fight for yourself. Nicole and I started showing up for each other. Not perfectly. Not all the time. But enough. There was this afternoon I'll never forget. We were in the kitchen, making pancakes. She burnt the first batch, and I laughed so hard I almost cried. She smiled that shy smile she always reserved for moments she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be happy. And right there, in that messy kitchen with flour on our faces and syrup on the counter, I realized, this was family. I also saw it in my friends. People who weren't related by blood but had been with me through every twist and turn. Who made me feel seen. Who didn't ask me to hide my quirks or soften my edges. Who loved me for exactly who I was. That's when I truly understood what it meant to be the black sheep. It's not a curse. It's a rebellion. A declaration that you will not shrink to fit other people's expectations. That you will not settle for less than respect and love. That you will build your own family. Nicole and I still have our ups and downs. But we've created a bond grounded in honesty and acceptance. It's not perfect. But it's real. And for me, that's enough. Part 7, Owning My Story, Embracing My Strength. Growing up, I always felt like I was swimming upstream, against family expectations, cultural norms, and sometimes my own self-doubt. Being the black sheep wasn't just a label, it was the soundtrack to my life. At first, I hated it. I wanted to blend in, to be liked, to be accepted. But over time, I realized something important: my difference was my greatest strength. Every late-night phone call with friends who felt like outsiders too. Every time I stood firm in my boundaries while others folded. Every piece of art, every bold choice, every honest conversation, I was building resilience. I wasn't broken. I was awakening. And that awakening gave me a kind of freedom I'd never known. I started sharing my story openly. Not to seek sympathy or attention. But to connect. To remind others who feel lost in their families that they're not alone. That their voices matter. That they can rewrite their own narratives. That openness brought new people into my life, people who valued me not in spite of my black sheep status but because of it. People who celebrated authenticity over perfection. People who taught me that family can be chosen. That strength comes from embracing who you really are. Part 8, Building a Tribe of Black Sheep. I realized my story wasn't just mine to carry. It was a torch, a way to light the path for others who felt like outsiders. So I started sharing more. Online. At events. In small gatherings. I told my truth about being the black sheep, about the pain and the freedom, about learning to say no and finding my people. The response surprised me. Messages from strangers who felt seen for the first time. Friends who shared their own stories of feeling different. People who told me they'd been afraid to embrace their weirdness, but now felt inspired to stand tall. We formed a tribe. A group of misfits, rebels, dreamers. People who had been told they were too loud, too soft, too weird, too sensitive. And who now understood that those things were exactly what made them beautiful. We laughed. We cried. We held space for each other's scars and victories. Being the black sheep stopped being a burden. It became a badge of honor. A symbol of courage. A reminder that sometimes, the hardest paths lead to the brightest places. Part 9, Walking Forward with Confidence and Peace. Looking back, it's wild how much changed when I stopped trying to fit in. When I stopped bending and breaking to meet impossible expectations. When I stopped apologizing for being myself. I found something I hadn't realized I was missing. Confidence. Not the loud kind that demands attention. But quiet confidence, the kind that comes from knowing your worth, owning your story, and refusing to shrink. Peace followed. Not because everything got easier. But because I stopped carrying burdens that weren't mine to bear. Because I surrounded myself with people who celebrated me, not tolerated me. Because I learned to give myself permission to be imperfect, messy, and unapologetically me. Sometimes, family still hurts. Sometimes, the past whispers in the quiet moments. But those moments don't define me anymore. I am more than the labels. More than the judgments. More than the pain. I am the woman who stood up, walked away, and built a life on her own terms. And if you're reading this, feeling like the black sheep in your own family, know this. You are not alone. You are enough. Your story matters. And the best chapters are yet to come. Part 10, Embracing Yourself is the Greatest Victory. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. You don't have to change who you are to be worthy of love. You don't have to silence your truth to belong. You don't have to sacrifice your peace for the sake of someone else's comfort. Being the black sheep isn't a curse, it's a declaration. A declaration that you will live authentically, boldly, and unapologetically. It's not about burning bridges or holding grudges. It's about setting boundaries. Choosing your tribe. And honoring your journey. Every step away from people who don't see your worth is a step toward freedom. Every moment spent nurturing yourself is a moment spent healing. Every day you show up as your true self is a victory. So, to anyone who feels like the odd one out, the misunderstood, the different one in your family or community. You are not alone. You are seen. You are enough. And the world needs your unique light. Thank you for reading my story. If it resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, your story matters and your voice is powerful. Stay true to yourself, always. Thanks so much for watching and hearing my story. If you've ever felt like the black sheep, or struggled to find your place, remember, you're not alone, and you are enough just as you are. I'd love to hear your thoughts or your own story in the comments below, so don't be shy to share. If you want more real, heartfelt stories and conversations, hit that subscribe button and join this growing community. We're all learning and growing together. Take care of yourself, stay authentic, and I'll see you in the next video. Have an amazing day.